2020 Vision webinar. This is a series of events that we at HP are very excited to be involved in. And judging by the registration numbers that we're getting for this series of events, I think it's something that's really caught the interests of the market. So we really do appreciate you taking time to join us here today. We do understand in the virtual environment that we're all forced to live and operate within today, we are seeing the pressure of ever congested diaries. So again, we really do appreciate your time in joining us here today. A quick introduction to myself. So as the slide will tell you, I'm Paul Randall. I'm the product marketing manager with the solutions organization, which is part of the HP Graphic Solutions business. In terms of my background, I've been with HP for a little over 16 years. I've had many different roles covering different print applications or print segments, from general commercial print to direct mail to packaging and again now publishing. So this is actually the second time that I've been involved in a publishing industry role within HP, the first time being around 8 or 9 years ago. And even in that relatively short space of time, it's been fascinating to see and learn that the changes, the developments that have taken place. So, I for one, am really looking forward to getting more insight into the ongoing trends and dynamics that the industry is facing during the course of today's session. So just to look at then why HP and why the Publishing 2020 Vision webinars. Well, in terms of HP, firstly, we're an organization that has entrepreneurialism at the core of our business. The company vision is to use technology and create technology that makes lives better for everyone, everywhere. And this is a vision that guides everything we do, and it's true to the original inspiration of our organization. So in short, our company mission is to keep reinventing. And then if you look then at the Publishing 2020 Vision webinars as a series of events, I think it's that very same forward-thinking philosophy that we're applying to these series of webinars. It's about exploring the wide-ranging trends and dynamics that are driving and delivering transformation for the publishing industry. Undoubtedly, across the course of the last 6 months and the global pandemic that we've all been living with, there has been, an acceleration of change in many instances. And really what we're doing with the series of events is pulling together a number of leading industry professionals to really look at the mega trends and what is happening with the industry and shine the spotlight on those changes. And really look at how we continue to drive change in the publishing industry to 2020 and beyond. So again, just to reinforce HP and our role within this series of events. So the publishing industry is a very important industry to HP as an organization. We've been providing leading print technology within the industry for many years, and for the last 12 years or so, our page-wide industrial presses have been responsible for printing a huge number of pages within the book industry. So over 230 billion A4 book pages across a whole series of different print providers, covering a huge number of different countries around the globe. We estimate that actually over half of the print on demand market within the publishing industry for both the US and Europe is currently being printed on HP digital presses. So in short, it's a market that we're very actively involved with, and it's a market that we continue to see as having significant strategic importance for HP moving forward. But if you look beyond the presses and beyond the printing hardware, as an organization, coming back to that ethos of reinvention, we're also looking beyond the presses and beyond the hardware to what other developments and solutions we can bring to the industry that deliver incremental value and new business opportunities. And one of those solutions is HP Piazza, which is a solution that essentially bridges the world of publishing with the world of digital printing to drive a more efficient print-on-demand process. So at its core, Piazza is a cloud-based system. It allows a content owner's content to be printed and delivered to order. So it's enabling physical content to really perform and act much more in the way, or much more in line with a digital-first philosophy. So digital content can be ingested into Piazza and distributed for automated production via a global network of print partners. So really supporting, enabling and driving transformation through increased use of print on demand technology. So on that note, I will hand over to our moderator for today, Michiel. Michiel, across to yourself.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Oops. Thank you, Paul. So we have a stellar panel for you today, the representatives from all four powerhouses in publishing, Springer Nature, WILEY, Elsevier, and Sage. And we have Niels Peter Thomas from Springer Nature, Yang Wu from WILEY, Dante from Elsevier, and Vivek Mehra from Sage. So we're very happy to have all of them today here. And so I would like to start first introduce Niels Peter Thomas. He's the Managing Director, Books, responsible for Springer Nature's book portfolio, which is 300,000 academic books. So quite impressive. And they add 13,000 every year. And he's also responsible for 600 editorial colleagues worldwide. And he's also running actually the Springer Campus GmbH, so which is focusing on e-learning and distant learning programs. So quite a diverse role. Niels has been with Springer since 2005, worked in Heidelberg, Wiesbaden, and also in Beijing, and has a PhD in economics. Niels, can I give the floor to you to give your opening words and slides? And I think you're still on mute. I see the slides, but I don't hear you yet.
That's true, yes. But now you should be able to hear me.
Very good. Yeah, go ahead.
Good. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Paul and Michiel, for having me, and thanks, Michiel, for the introduction. Yeah, well, you've announced it, and you would otherwise hear it from my accent. I'm based in Germany. The picture behind me implies otherwise, but that's my heritage of having worked from Beijing. I'll give a perspective. I'll start with a special perspective in STM publishing, which is the book perspective. You said it. In my 15 years of Springer Nature, I had times when I was responsible for journals as well, but now I'm entirely looking after the books. And I mean, it's a good topic in the context of printing, because as you all know, book publishing is still more print oriented than journal publishing on average. But how that is changing and how we see the trends in book publishing in general, I think is the topic now for the next couple of minutes. I'm happy to give you my perspective here, and I would like to start actually with a few quotes that I received in discussion with authors from ours and important people in the scientific community a couple of years ago. I have to say these quotes are 3 or 4 years old, and since then times have changed. But as you can see, and maybe you have heard that from the community, from the scientific community as well, there are people out there, there are researchers out there who were questioning the value of books and book publishing in general at all. And I think that's an important starting point for a discussion. We are the largest academic book publisher in the world. So for us, it makes a huge difference if the book in general has a future or not. And the good news here is that since then, a lot of things have happened in the market. So right now, I think we would not receive these quotes anymore, because mainly because of the digitalization, I would say. A lot of awareness has reached many communities that book publishing is not that very traditional, old, ancient format that we don't need anymore. But it's interesting to acknowledge and important to acknowledge where we are coming from, and that there is a huge transformation going on in the community. let's look at just a very few aspects of what are the recent trends, what's new because of the pandemic, of course, in book publishing. And I can say that if I look at the processes, everything is in change. Everything is in flux in a way. The way we create content has very much changed in the last, let's say, 1 or 2 years. We've published, maybe you have seen that, we wrote a bit about it. We've published the first book last year that did not have any author anymore, at least not a human author, because it was written entirely by machine intelligence and an AI algorithm, and was creating a proper and meaningful scientific book on chemistry in this particular situation. But we tried it out since then in a lot of other disciplines as well. So machine translation, machine generation of content is a topic that is now on the rise and will change also the role of publishers and book publishers, especially in the next coming years. Book production is a big topic that has changed, and where we also will see a few more changes in the future. I mean, in general, we have a shrinking print market, so we printed less. That also triggered the way how we wanted to print. I think Paul mentioned it in the beginning. Printing on demand was on the rise in the last, let's say, 10, 15 years and so on, and still is. I think within Springer Nature, the vast majority of books that we are publishing and that we are selling are printed on demand or immediately before they are read. This has changed a lot. Also, the type of content we are acquiring, because when you don't have to print a large upfront, a large print run, then you can cover niche topics or smaller disciplines or smaller languages, even with your regular processes without changing too much otherwise, which therefore the printing technology has also changed our portfolio, which is an interesting feedback loop in a way. What is also changing, and what we also see, especially also this year, is the multimedia integration, so that a lot of our books that we publish cannot be printed anymore because they include any additional digital formats that are unprintable in a way, but still we want to make that what can be read in print made available in that format. But on the digital side is also worth mentioning that we see a lot of very versatile formats, a lot of different formats. It's not just one print and one or one digital format, but it's a multitude of different formats and versions. Might be languages or contexts in which we publish these books. So there are really many different digital formats. Maybe the most interesting part of the changes are really with the book's business models that are definitely also not in steady state these days. So there has been a trend for a more diversity in digital formats as well. It's always a bit difficult to say, Michiel, if you would then later ask me, then how many of our books are read in print and how many are read digitally. That's an answer that we cannot give, because we still assume that a lot of books that we sell digitally are then printed out individually, just as loose papers in a way. That's what many people still do, I'm afraid. And to somehow give an answer in our business models, we have a couple of years ago introduced a business model called My Copy, where we also have a combination of digital and print business models, and allowed libraries to give to their patrons print copies of the books that they had acquired in digital format. We print them, but it's a quick and a soft cover printing, but it allows then people who quickly browse digitally through the contents of a book, but then said, this is really so important for me, I want to read it in a lengthy format from front to end as a book was traditionally read. Then it's for most people easier and more convenient to do it in print, and we want to meet that demand and reduce the price then for the printed version, but only if the library has acquired the digital format to it. Open access books.
The chapter or the whole book?
Sorry?
Then you print one chapter or the whole book?
We print the whole book. We always then print the whole book. Digitally, you can get a chapter individually, but in print, we made the decision that it does not make sense to deliver only one chapter or so. Yeah, so it's the full book. Another trend which is important and also changes the way we print or not print is the trend to open access content. I think this is the bigger change here, definitely on the journal side, but on the books, we've also seen since the last 5 years massive growth rates for open access books that we are publishing now. So with no paywall anymore, can be read by anyone with internet connection. It's interesting to hear maybe that we are still printing. We are offering the printed version from these open access books. It's for a discounted price, of course, but there is a huge demand of printed versions of open access books. So obviously people still want to pay to read a book in print, even if they can get the content for free. That's a really interesting phenomenon to mention, because it really shows the importance of print to the human processing of knowledge, especially when it comes to book formats that are the longer format, where you have not only 1 or 2 pages that you want to really deep dive in, but in many cases a full story from for 200 or 300 pages or so. Reading has changed, so the consumers change. We've seen massive increases in the online usage of our books. So there is a shift from less print books to be sold and more e-books or digital books to be read. But it's hard to exactly say how the consumers, in which context they are using which format. We've seen from our own queries and surveys with customers and end users that most of us readers are dual mode readers, that we would prefer digital and print formats in different situations where we are. So students, for example, during the lecture, during the semester, very often prefer a digital version. They don't have to carry the printed book to university, to school and back. But when it comes to preparation of the examination, many students, even the computer science students, so it's not limited to certain disciplines, even them, they still prefer very often to browse in the written book. And therefore there is still a demand for written books in libraries. And then maybe last not least, of course, COVID-19 continues to be an accelerator for these trends. We don't see a complete new one. What we just have seen in the course of 2020, it's not over yet, but it's foreseeable that this will continue, is a strong acceleration of this transformation from print to e. That's currently happening. So a lot of libraries are reluctant in 2020 to buy print books because they don't know how quick the students can come back to use these books. They are licensing much more electronic versions of the book. Maybe in the combination of my copy, as I said, maybe with the option of printing them later. But at least these days, there is a clear trend from print to e. And maybe as a side note, also a general difficult budget situation of many universities in most countries. Not so much in China these days, but very much in some European countries, in Latin America, and in the US. So this will lead to more changes in what we print, how content is read. What is clear to me, and therefore I come back to to my first slide, the book will continue definitely, and mankind will continue to at least have the idea of reading it in print. But the share will certainly continue to change massively.
Yes. I have a quick question myself, and then I go to some questions that are coming in. And that is for the machine-generated manuscripts. So who holds the copyright and gets the royalties?
That's a very good question. So no royalties, because the machine does not eat bread. That's the good news for the publisher. It's a book where nobody claims royalties for. No, I mean, I'm kidding. That's not the reason why we do it. But I think it is a really important service to authors. Actually, we have done the proof that we can publish books completely automated, but that's actually not our plan. We don't want to grow the number of purely machine-written books to infinite. We could do it technically, but it would not make any sense, because the true creativity and the true new results must come from researchers, must come from the academics, and will not come from a deep learning machine intelligence. Just looking at older books and other content and then create something new. It's good for a summary, it's good for an overview of a field, and it will in the future help all authors to create better books and quicker, but it will not be that we will completely stop working with real authors. That would be a dystopia, I would say, for publishers.
I understand. So in this transformation towards digital first, as far as the workflow is concerned, where do you think we are? Are we like at the beginning? Are we halfway? Are we almost there at the end?
Well, if you ask that for the book industry in general, I think it's a very mixed picture. If you ask it from the perspective of Springer Nature, I think we are there are, with very few exceptions, we are there. We do publish the ebook before the printed book. We do sell more in digital form than in print form. It's simply that we do not see, maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago even, we would have expected that one day we will be purely digital, and that I don't expect anymore. There is a continuous ongoing demand to read books in print, and that I think current research with neuroscientists really show that this seems to be somehow hardwired in our brains, that the printed format resonates very good with the way we are processing information. You can make reliable experiments with students that if you give one group the printed book and the other group an iPad or a digital reading device with a website with the same content where they can browse up and down to read the same content, on average, the students with the printed book will achieve better results. So there is something in it. So this is why my plan and our plan as Springer Nature for book publishing is really, yes, digital first. And that's very important for our processes, full XML production. And then at the very end, there is a possibility to make a printed version, and we will continue to offer that, but the market will tell us how many of them we will sell, but we will not stop offering printed books. That's not foreseeable.
And is that also the reason that open access books are still printed, or are there other reasons there?
No, I think the only reason is that there is a demand for it. People want to read it in print, and therefore we deliver that. I mean, that's our responsibility to offer the right business models for our customers and our and our partners. If there would be no demand, we could easily stop it, or we would in theory offer it, but nobody would ask for it if we do it on demand. I mean, there are very little costs just for the offering, but people want to read it in print. It's a really interesting phenomenon. Although they can read it, or maybe probably most of them have actually read the digital version or looked at the digital version first, but still then say, okay, now this is worth the money that I have it in print. I can refer to it, I can make notes, whatever you do with your printed books, and it resonates better with the way my brain wants to process information. But I think there is a difference, and this would be interesting then to the colleagues. I think that's a very different perspective between books and journals. Books are still the long format. I mean, there are books where you can look at individual chapters, but most books really should be read from start to end. And this is why we should take more time for a book than we take for a journal article, which is a different situation in reading.
Thank you, Niels.
Thank you.
Very insightful. I think we'll go to the next panelist, and it's Yang Wu. who's the editorial director of WILEY in China, responsible for setting up all the content acquisition across that vast country. Yang has been working in academic publishing for nearly 10 years, according to all kind of STMJ departments, different positions, and also spent some time abroad with Research for Borders program in Africa to support their medical journals, like for instance, Sierra Leone. So welcome, Yang, and I'll give the floor to you for your opening slides and statements.
Thanks, Michiel. Can you hear me for now?
Yep, loud and clear, thanks.
Okay, great. So yeah, thanks for having me here. I mean, it's actually great to be part of this webinar. And so I think I'm going to share a little bit domestic perspective. I think a lot of those current status or a little bit of future trends are actually with the input of a lot of my colleagues, and I think who has a very good understanding of the current markets. So yeah. So before talking a little bit about the STM publishing future trends, I want to step back to. So, I mean, you can see this is a very busy slide, which I've covered quite a bit. So starting with a little bit about research, research and researcher perspective, and this is pretty much my expertise around, because I've been always working within the journals and editorial parts. So you can see I've listed like seven items, but I think that this order doesn't really reflect importance. I think for me, they're equally important. So from my perspective, I think, first of all, in China, I think the overall open science, and including open access, open data, and other aspects has been widely embraced. Particularly, I've highlighted preprint because I think in the past few years, based on my understanding, it's not being well recognized. But I think the pandemic actually raised awareness of preprint. So I think this has been widely aware for the preprint and preprint serve, because it's so fast in terms of sharing research results. And my second observation is, I think in China, language is still a barrier in terms of either consume research articles or English books. I know that there has been massive improvement have been made in the past 10 to 20 years, because I know a lot of researchers have been trained abroad, but I think majority of them still had some challenge in terms of digest English content. I mean, it's not their first priority at least. And I can also still see a lot of challenges in terms of to catch up with the latest research results, and especially with the massive growth of article published. So I think in China, like those social mediums like WeChat channels and TikTok, Bilibili, I think they played a role to help those researchers, especially those who have some problems with English, to digest some of the research content. And it's also not just within the format of print content, but it's also in different formats like short videos and graphics, etc. So the other observation I can see is, I think quality to high impact factor journals with a very fast peer review process is still very needed. And I think you've all heard a lot about recent policy announcements by the government in terms of moving away from impact factor. But I think in short term, impact factor will still play quite an important role in academic evaluations. And last, the another items I want to share is I think a lot of policies around trying to first domestic journals is setting up. So I think I will spend a little bit of time talking about the trends later on, but I think for now, a lot of researchers in China still have mixed feelings about domestic journals, because a lot of them, the global impact is still relatively limited. But I think they have been policies to push that forward. The other current status I can see, I think this has been the case for a couple of years already. So quality is actually more important than quantity, and also the research integrity has gained a lot of attentions from different levels, the government level and institution level. So we also see a trend that a lot of researchers being trained abroad coming back to China. So I also shared some very, very initial understanding about, from industry and the public, and particularly what their needs in terms of research content, where I can see a lot of high-tech companies. I think including some of the startup companies, do have the needs to, to access those cutting-edge research. But I think for them, particularly their problems for accessing, digesting the English content is even higher. So I think the WeChat channel, in terms of consuming those content within Chinese, plays an important role. And I think a lot of domestic online and offline webinars and conferences also plays an important role here. What I can see for now is I think the gap between the research and the industry is still quite huge. And I think for the public in general, in terms of the needs of research content, is quite huge as well. But I think a lot of the needs are really coming from specific areas, which is really related with people's daily life. For example, like the health science, and I think, for example, like the COVID-19 content really drives a lot of attention, and also food security and environment, etc. So with all those kind of some observations and facts we're finding so far, I think based on my personal, those will probably be the future trends for China particularly, but within a very global context. So I think quality research, applied research, and some interdisciplinary research, which will be able to solve some very complex issues, will probably be our focus. You can see the metrics around academic evaluation will be diversified. And I think partly because of the pandemic and other reasons, I think the whole funding landscape will probably be changed a bit as well. And also my personal view is some of the researchers' research direction will probably change a bit as well. Open science will definitely be widely embraced, and I can see in long term that a lot of the domestic journals from China will definitely gain a lot of global impact. And that's, I think, with collaborating with global publishers like WILEY and others, will help those, will partner with those journals to help them to gain a global impact as well. My observations around technology is pretty much aligned with a lot of others, like Niels mentioned about, machine can generate books. So I think technology will definitely play an important role in, digest content and advanced content discovery. I think a quick example recently is really the article collections, for example, like the current COVID-19 collections across different journals and organizations. I think that's really helpful to tackle the issue around COVID-19. And my observation is, I think in the future, like the special issues or special collections for some very complex global issues will become quite popular as well. And I think AI will probably involve in a peer review process to speed the whole process. I know that there has been some pilots within the industry. I think I've talked a little bit about, how the young generation like different, formats of content, not just the PDF or the print content, but I think more research results will be displayed in different formats like videos and graphics. And I do feel in China, particularly, I can't say other part of the world, I think the phone will play an important role even more than the PC. Just a quick numbers, I think till middle of 2019, we have 648 million of phone users within China. So I think with the technology of 5G, and I think phone will definitely play an important role of reuse of research content in the future. Social media, I know that Weibo and WeChat is really popular for now, but I think this will become stable later on, and I think a lot of Chinese stakeholders within research will probably set up on using different ways and channels to help to improve the global visibility. And I can also see that infrastructures to foster those virtual scientific communications, like what we're using Zoom, will be in place as well. I can see, for example, if we're organizing certain conferences in China, I think sometimes it's a little bit challenging to include some of the global audience as well. But I think in the future, the technology, the infrastructure will definitely be improved. And I can also see that in China, there should be more development in infrastructures and capabilities to bridge the gap between research and industry in many areas, like in agriculture and in other high information areas, foods as well. So yeah, that's pretty much my
Thank you, Yang. Yeah, great overview. I had a question about open science and open access, since China is producing this massive amount of articles. Is there also a massive amount of APCs readily available to publish them all as gold OA?
Sorry, Michiel, say that again.
So if all these, you say that open access is the way to go in China, and at the same time, we see a very large amount of articles coming out of China. So if they all have to be published open access, is there also funding available for all those APCs? Okay,
yeah. That's a very good question where I can't really answer, but I can share some of my understandings. I think for now, like the big term like open science is quite broadly being aware and used in different levels, even some of the government level policies. But I think in terms of the open access, you're pointing the right points where I think funding is not fully available for to publish all the open access articles. That we have massive publications every year with a double-digit growth. So I think it will take time to do so. It's not going to happen in a day or two, or even a year, or even 2 years. I think it takes a long time for us to make that kind of change and moving toward that direction. But I can see it's definitely the trend, but it will take a lot of time, and not just funding part. I think a lot of other infrastructures need to be ready as well.
Great, thank you. I'm aware of the time, so I think we'll have to move to the next panelist, and it's Dante Sit. Dante is now Vice President for Academic Relations for the whole of Latin America. He actually has a Master's in Science on AI, so very visionary. Dante has been Regional Director in Latin America, Managing Director, and he serves on many different boards, for instance, Vice President for the Brazilian Publishers Association, etc. Dante, I will give the floor to you for your opening remarks and insights from Latin America.
Thank you, Michiel. Hello, great pleasure to be here with you today. Congratulations to HP for organizing this panel on such a relevant topic. going to talk to you a little bit about the context in Latin America for the future of STM publishing. And in that regard, it's worth taking a quick look at the past. And the past shows that Latin America actually has always been publishing in the open access model. The diamond type, which is the type where there's no fee for the author, but there's also not any fee either for the reader. The journals are managed by the academics in their spare time. So that's the diamond type, and the local journals in Latin America have always been of this kind. And for more than 20 years, we have had platforms sponsored by local governments, funding agencies, to make available also online all that content, at least the top journals in the region. So you have Cielo with more than 20 years, then you had Redalik, and also for the local repositories indexes like La Referencia, and also many examples of online repositories and local journals. And I could refer to many things that Jan said about China. It's not only Latin America, but you'll find similar situations in several countries, apart from Europe and US and Canada. So at that type of consideration, all this open access content available in Latin America, is worth taking a look at comparison between the region and let's say Europe, where you see here this chart showing the share of publications per type. Let's take a look at, for instance, the gold type, the hybrid, and bronze. Let's leave green aside for some time, because there is a time dimension applied to green that does not serve us for this comparison. At some point, all the green publications will become publicly available. So let's compare gold, hybrid, and bronze. Europe, you see here by the charts that most countries are around the 20% share total of all these types, while in Latin America, you have here an example, for instance, for Brazil, but this is the same picture in many of the other countries. If you take the 5 years window between 2014 and 2018, 37% of the articles containing at least one Brazilian author were already open access, again, of the diamond or gold type. In the last window, the latest window, 2015 to 19, this goes up to 42%. So it shows clearly that Latin America has kept this culture of publishing open access. It is still beyond the share we find in European countries, despite all the push that we see in Europe towards gold, which, by the way, has been a big controversy in the region because of all this history of diamond type in the region, Europe going gold. After the initial fuss about, let's say, okay, let's move everybody to gold, the community, the academic community in Latin America realized that perhaps gold is not the best option for the region because there's such an ecosystem already working in the diamond type that gold may not be the best service, excuse me, for the region. So we are seeing increasingly funding agencies in these countries sponsoring and giving focus to the local type of publication of the diamond type and creating programs to make this stronger and to be representing the open access trend in the region. But so far,
no need for Plan S actually in Latin America.
Yeah, exactly. There was an initial fuss about Plan S. There were a lot of interactions with European sponsors of the project, but people realized that there is a budget issue in Latin America, that there is the fear that with everything going gold, actually the local researchers might be out of the top journals because of the cost of APCs. So that's the concern in Latin America, and this has been bringing this focus to the local diamond type for some time now. And this is about journals, STM journals. But if we look at books, all the open access trends also brought a lot of attention to books. We see that Cielo created a special section just for books. You have hundreds and thousands of open access books there, primarily created by academic publishers, such as the university publishers. University of São Paulo has its own portal for open access books, but you also find the same in other universities in Brazil, especially the public ones. And here you see that also the Ministry of Education is considering creating its own material. So we see that it's not only for books, but the whole concept of open education resources has been gaining a lot of traction in the region to make sure that all society has access to the STM material that is created with public funds. Another trend that was accelerated more recently with the COVID issue is the preprints. The use of preprints has grown a lot, and also Cielo created a preprint area, but after again all the fuss about preprints, let's use that. It's free, it's quickly available. People realized actually what is the big difference between the preprint and all the post-print publication. It is exactly the peer review process, which is not there yet for the preprint. Although it is useful to have a quick look at the material, people realize that you have to be cautious because people have been using preprints, as we saw in recent examples, for bad objectives, right? To spread bad, not even research, bad information. And this gains space even in the media. So you see that people are migrating reading habits from papers to preprint and then to general media, press releases, which is not really under peer review process, which is our main pillar for the STM publication, is to make sure that all the material that is out there has passed a serious peer review process, which is the biggest value added by STM publishers in the industry. So that's a quick picture of what we find in Latin America. Thank you very much. We're looking forward for the questions.
Yes, thank you, Dante. I will now introduce the last panelist. And so we're very happy that we have Vivek Mehra here, who is CEO and MD of Sage Publications, who actually has an MBA from Columbia University. And I immediately give the floor to you, Vivek. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Michiel. You can hear me?
Yes,
yeah?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thanks. So I'm just going to talk about India a bit more than I talk about South Asia. So there are various opportunities. STEM R&D is very high on the government's priority, and I bring in the government because that's the largest funding agency in India. One of the good things is that it is one of the largest funding agencies. One of the bad things is that it is one of the largest funding agencies. We have very little that comes in from other sources. The second thing that has been happening is we now have the government and the ministries choosing content, which basically spells good news for publishers. There is interest in content coming from various ministries that were not our target market earlier. This is going to open up hopefully new markets for the same content, at least in India, but I am hearing that there are also some opportunities opening up in other South Asian countries. India is pushing for a very bold initiative called One Nation, One Subscription, where there is talk about journal access being provided to every citizen in the country. Now, it's bold, it's big, 1.3 billion people. The numbers are staggering. What does it mean? I don't think that everybody is going to be reading STM content, but nevertheless, at least getting this into mainstream or to the front burner in conversation, I think is a bold move and a big opportunity that would be coming from whatever discussions happen in this space. I think the big thing that would come about from any of this, this type of a move, even if it is not one entire nation looking at it, but if there is more access to research available to industry, India in particular, there is very poor access to industry on path-breaking research, simply because the orientation has not been around looking at this research. We've been, for most of our 3 years, we've been focused on basic basic issues of food, water, infrastructure, and what have you. It's in the last 2 decades that India has really come out and blossomed on its own. And I think the infrastructure to exploit research is still some distance to go. India is one of the leading consumers of content on mobile devices. It just simply amazes every type of business. And, we think that, oh, I don't think people look at this type of content on mobile or that type of content on mobile. All of those predictions are out the window. We don't know how this drives. We do know that it drives a lot of usage, but we don't know how it actually drives this usage. I anticipate that at least for developing nations like India, content delivery on mobile devices is going to be a game changer. The expansion of the education system, the new education policy in India is taking education to the student as opposed to the student coming to the institutions. With that kind of a push, mobile devices and content on mobile devices is going to be a big game changer. So what are some of the challenges? So I'm just talking about a few of them. The big problem is the fragmented government funding. And when I say fragmented funding, it's because it's coming from a central source. Most of the allocation is going to government agencies like research for atomic energy, space, earth sciences. There isn't enough research which is for commercial applications of STM research, and it's more broad-based in terms of it's narrow-based in terms of what it's trying to achieve, and should be actually more broad-based. We have another challenge, which is a very poor system of peer review. This is more coming from the next big thing that's been happening in India, which is we've got predatory publishing. So this has been going on for a while. There are various reasons why this took off in India. Most of it are coming from domestic need being not being met by publishers, and publishers didn't want to meet the domestic needs because there were some antiquated laws which continue to come in the way of good quality journal publishing. The combination of predatory publishing and poor peer review has actually been detrimental towards quality research being found and quality research actually coming to the forefront. Well, talking about quality of the research and the APCs, because of predatory publishing and because of poor understanding of open access, there was a stated policy in South Asia that if you paid to publish your research, it was not something that was considered as research. So we had that big problem. That the government has warmed up to the idea of open access and recognized open access, and some guidelines have come in. The future obviously is going to be focus on the research, focus on how it is being published. One of the things that's happening in India is we have a version of gold where there is a charge, but instead of authors or contributors paying it, institutions are footing the bill. So if there's a journal hosted at an institution, then the institution will foot the bill of the APC. India, I don't think is going to be ready. You asked the question, will we have the money for paying for APCs? I don't think India is going to be ready for that, and none of the other countries in South Asia are ever going to be ready to pay overseas, APCs. We'll have to find our own regional solutions, and that I think is in this challenge lies another big opportunity. Then a very strange phenomenon that we've been observing is that the total quantum of papers that are being released from India. Now, I don't know how this is measured accurately, but it's pretty high, but it's one of the least cited as a percentage of the total that's coming out of the country. Now, there could be various reasons for it. One area that we are looking at is to understand how this is happening or why this is happening. So essentially, that's it from me.
Great. No, thank you very much. And so we only 5 more minutes left. So I think I quickly will go over to Paul and say, Paul, maybe you have some key questions for the panelists as well.
Yeah, before that, obviously, let me just quickly thank everybody for their contributions today. A whole series of wide and varied insight, but I think it's been incredibly powerful to hear from everybody. So our thanks and appreciation. And Michiel, of course, yourself as well for the moderation of today's session. One question just to kind of kick off the Q&A. Particularly interested in, Niels made some comments way back at the start about the book will continue, the share will change, that the neuroscience of print resonating and achieving different results. I just wonder if I can ask a question about, what defines what's staying in print and what's going to electronic form? So are there key criteria? What's the kind of decision process in terms of what's defining what's in print?
I'm happy to take that question if that helps. So
yeah,
in book publishing, what's defining what goes in print is the market. So what I think Niels clarified was we don't have to have massive print runs upfront, and we can just wait for the orders to come in, and then it's showing up on the regular data. It's showing up as it's available. And if somebody says I want 1 copy or 5 copies or 500 copies, it's a question of, so the thing I think that confuses people is they think that print on demand versus stock in-house, there is a difference in timing. Whereas actually today, thanks to technology, there isn't one. The end customer would not know if it's printed on demand or it was lying in the warehouse and somebody shipped it. So I think that's where the answer lies, what goes into print first and what goes into digital first. I think no book can be without a digital strategy.
Okay, great, thanks.
So another question that came in that I find very interesting, is there something like a Netflix for books? Right, so we watch movies on Netflix, people don't watch TV anymore, so there must be an equivalent for books. So what would it look like, and why is it not here yet, or is it? Who will take this question?
Well, happy to take it. Actually, there is several STM publishers in the region are offering a subscription model to institutions where the users can just pick and choose whichever book they want to download or to read online or to print. So good news, there is a books Netflix STM already.
Yeah, and I think that in the other space outside of STM, I think there are more platforms that are offering this kind of pick and choose. And they are actually, Sage has a few in India which are targeted, one set which is targeted to libraries, one set which is targeted to corporate houses. So yeah, that version is available.
And then for educational publishers, we've seen, of course, dramatic change there, where in the past you had to buy individual, pretty pricey books, and there Cengage also has this, I would say, buffet style approach now. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of echo what you guys just said. I think in China, no matter in STM books or even some public books, I think we both have similar solutions like Netflix within the market. So, yeah.
Very good. I think we've run out of time. So maybe Paul, for you, the last word.
Yeah, so again, I mean, just as we draw this to a close, to thank everybody for their time and their contribution. This is the fourth in the series for the Publishing 2020 webinar series, and we look forward to sharing more insights and discussing more topics with you on the series to come. So, once again, thank you to everybody for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.